I recommend not using the stick figure method. There's a stick figure method? What on earth? Hold up. Oh my goodness. No, not like this. Not like this. Oh my God. Okay, so apparently all the kiddos nowadays are on TikTok, and apparently there are people giving out art tips on TikTok. So I thought, you know what? I want to make sure that my babies are getting the right information from the right people. So I'm going to take a quick look through some of these art tips on TikTok. I don't know why I've done this to myself, but I've looked up art tips on TikTok, and I'm gonna scroll through some of these videos to see what the kids are watching nowadays. I mean, it's like a 10 to 30 second clip. I really wonder how much information you can get out of these. First video, let's go. This first video basically is telling you to curve your eye lines and your shoulder lines. It's a good tip. I can see where you're coming from. You want to add a little bit more flow and fluidity into your figure drawings. But the thing is, you have to know when to curve these lines. You can't just do it arbitrarily. For example, the eye line, if I'm looking at you guys straight on like this, my eye line is going to be completely straight. There's going to be no need to curve this line anywhere. But if I were to tilt my head way up like this, now you can see that my eye line, this straight line right here, is following the front curve of my face. Now we want to curve this eye line downwards. I look so stupid right now. That's an instance where you want to curve the line. The shoulder line too, like if I'm hunched over and forward like that, you might want to curve that shoulder line in this kind of a direction. I'm getting old. So overall, you know, it's a solid tip. Like, you do want to curve these lines when you're drawing characters in specific poses, but you don't want to curve them just for the sake of curving them. So you didn't really say when to implement this method properly. So I'm gonna give that a 5 out of 10.
Use references. I get most of mine from Pinterest and...
Okay, so the second video is basically telling you guys how to draw anatomy, and the first tip is to use references. You had me at references, okay? Whenever somebody doesn't know how to draw something, I always tell them, go look at references. References are going to change your life. For example, if you don't know how to draw a head, you might want to go to one of your enemies and you might want to take their skull, and you might want to reference something like this so that you know how a human head is supposed to look. This used to be my enemy.
And not using the stick figure method.
Stick figure method? I recommend not using the stick figure method. There's a stick figure method? What on earth? Oh. So here's where I have a problem with this. You had me at references, but you lost me here. The first step that this person is saying to do is to use guidelines. Now, I agree with that, okay? You wanna make sure that you find the vertical line of the face. You wanna make sure you find the eye line. You wanna make sure you find the shoulder line and the gesture line and all of that. But the second step this person is saying to do is to use 3D shapes, AKA boxes. Now,
Second.
This is a no-no for me, okay? So I know people personally who use boxes and it seems to work for them. But the thing is, within the human body, there's nothing that even closely resembles a box. If you want to learn the three-dimensional shapes of the human body, look at that skeleton right there. Right? Look at the shape of the rib cage, like a big egg. And look at the shape of the pelvis, it's like a bowl. There's nothing in there that resembles a box. And I think adding in a box is really just adding an extra step for yourself, an extra level of comprehension that you need to have in order to be able to draw that human body. I honestly think it's way better to just learn the structure of that skeleton and not try to fit everything into a box. I don't like boxes. Okay, boxes are not for me. All right, so I've skipped forward and this is the final step, which is adding in the outlines. But you see what happened here is once you have the boxes in there, the outlines become so stiff. Like, you have to work around these rigid shapes that don't belong in the human body. What would have made this way more powerful is if you had an actual shape of the rib cage, this oval shape that ends with these two round. That didn't look right. But you know what I mean? If you had a little bit more flow in the understructure of your body, that I need to stop doing that. When you have that, the figure that you draw on top of it is gonna have a lot more flow, a lot more fluidity, a lot more expressiveness. No boxes. Repeat after me. No boxes. But everybody works differently. You know, if boxes are just, they really work for you, do your thing. We just can't be friends. So that video was pretty good, but you lost me at the steps a little bit. So I would give that a 6 out of 10.
Here are 3 art mistakes you need to stop doing right now in order for you to become a better artist. Now let's get started. Okay, so the first mistake I see a lot of artists do is chicken scratch lining. Basic line.
300,000 likes. That's a very popular video. So the first thing that this person mentioned is chicken scratching. Chicken scratching is something that's very common to beginners because you might be unsure of where to put this line. You might be not super familiar with the way your hand moves. So you just draw small incremental lines that make up one bigger line. And then all your lines start looking like kind of fuzzy, you know, so that's something that you don't want to do. That's a very good tip. Usually with line art and sketching, you know, the sign of somebody who is really good at that is they're able to say a lot with very few lines. So that's a very good point. That's definitely something you want to practice. You want to draw lines in one single stroke instead of doing like a little chicken scratchy thing. Be more confident, guys.
So instead of doing that, lay down the foundation first, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so the second tip he's saying is to draw the construction lines first instead of just drawing the outline of your subject. And I think that is a very good tip, especially for beginners. You want to make sure that you really hammer down the foundational structure of the subject that you're drawing. When you see me drawing sometimes, you know, you're going to see that I just start with the outline of the character, but that's because I understand the construction lines and how everything is set up. So I don't really need to draw that base for me to build on top of. But for people who are at intermediate and beginner levels, it's very good to set down construction lines. So that's a good tip. But I like his drawing from just the outline better than the one with construction lines. Yeah, the outline one was better, man. I don't know, this method might not be working for you. Last tip is to stop choking your pencil. He's saying to stop holding it so close to the tip, stop squeezing this thing, and just let your hand hang a little bit looser and a little bit further behind. This is a very good tip too, because when you're drawing, especially on a bigger surface, you want to make sure that there's a lot of movement within your hand and your fingers, and you can get some really nice gestures in there. But if you were choking your pencil like that, it's going to be very hard for you to make big free gestures. This video is very good. I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. Good job. It's AJ Art for teaching the babies the right way to do things.
Oh my gosh, what a handsome man. I'm just going to add line art and I'm going to teach you how to improve your line art part 2.
Next.
Stop drawing sketches like this. You are ruining your art. But you should start off all of your sketches with a shape kind of like this. You can draw it super fast, which means your proportions are...
Hold on. Oh my goodness. No, not like this. Not like this.
The shape of our ribcage and pelvis affects poses a lot.
Okay, so this video by the Enchanted Pencil is saying to lay down a foundational sketch like this. Everybody draws things differently, okay? Let's just put that out there first. But I really don't think that there's any rhyme or reason to the shape of that rib cage and the shape of that pelvis. The pelvis is not a box, okay? Once again, I'm fighting boxes. If you want to do this, if you want to draw that construction layer for your character, it'd be much more beneficial for you to draw the actual shape of the skull, the actual shape of the rib cage, which is this organic kind of oval shape. You know, I wouldn't really condone just drawing this arbitrary stick figure. You know, you want the structure of your character to kind of resemble the actual anatomical structure of the human body. So this video, you know, you had the right idea, you had the right intentions, but the example here is not the most viable. So I'm gonna give that a 4 out of 10.
For sketching and inking, I highly recommend drawing on a non-white background. I recommend making your background color a neutral gray, a slightly darker, warm color. Try experimenting and finding a color that works for you.
Okay, so this video is basically saying in the beginning stages of your painting to not draw on just a plain white canvas to avoid eye strain. And that's actually a very good tip. I know a lot of people like to work on a gray canvas so that they're able to better see the contrast between the lights and the darks. But the thing is, when you start adding color to that underlayer, instead of just using a neutral gray, now that color is actually going to affect the kind of colors that you put on top of it. You can try this out yourself. When you paint on a blue background versus when you paint on an orange background, the colors that you choose and the mood of that painting are going to change as a result. So don't choose your colors arbitrarily for the background just because it's pretty. Choose them strategically. For example, if you got a sunset painting, you might want to put that background color as orange. Or if you have a night scene, you might want to put that background color as a dark blue. But the first tip to work on a neutral gray background is very good. That's a tip that you could always use if you find the white to be a little bit too strong. A very, very good tip there, but kind of didn't mention the effect that that underlayer color might have on the painting. So I'm gonna give that a 7 out of 10. I'm starting to notice a trend. These videos are a little bit too short for you to get all the information in there. So, you know, you always gotta take these with a grain of salt. This guy again.
Step 1, using shapes. Shapes are good for all drawing, of course. Even more impressive when you want to create cool characters for whatever you're trying to create.
Tip number 1 is to use shapes, which I agree with. If you're drawing a stylized character, you might want to fit them into a triangle, you might want to fit them into a circle. You know, just using shapes for a character creates a very iconic silhouette, and I know that's something that a lot of people use. So that's a very solid tip right there.
By using boxes, cylinders, characters is a great way to...
He just said boxes, and I'm a little bit triggered right now.
The next tip is very important. That is exaggerating your poses and proportions of your characters.
Oh my god! She thick! He's saying to exaggerate the proportions and the poses of your characters. Now this makes sense in certain scenarios. Obviously, if you're drawing a stylized character, this makes sense because you want to push the proportions to make them look visually interesting and iconic. But if you're drawing a more realistic character, this tip might not really apply, but I think overall still a pretty solid tip.
And the last and final tip is clothing. Clothes and weapons also help with the character process. Just Google or Pinterest for reference.
Last tip was clothing. I didn't really see the point in the last tip. Like, what, you just gotta put clothes onto your characters? No sh**. Not as solid as the first video I saw of this guy, but still pretty good. I'll give that a 6 out of 10. Oh my goodness, deadly art mistakes. Wow, I'm hooked.
Number 1, skipping the basics. Anatomy and perspective ain't sexy, but they're the crucial foundation all of your art is built upon. Build that foundation by practicing drawing shapes and perspective and doing anatomy studies every day.
I like that. Okay, you gotta build the foundation. Don't skip the foundation. Very good, very good.
Minutes a day minimum will completely transform your art as long as you put in the...
Yes, 10 minutes a day will transform your art. That's... oh, so good. Oh, the video stopped. There was only one mistake he mentioned in this video. I thought it was going to be multiple because it said deadly art mistakes. Super good tip, but 1 out of 10 for clickbaiting me. Oh, so this one's more like motivational stuff. Stop saying I hate it, I can't draw. Stop saying my art sucks. Stop saying everyone is better than me. Pretty good start. Yes! You have to do this, okay? So this, that's so good. Okay, so when you're drawing something and you're like, I don't like this piece. Instead of just saying, I hate myself, I'm going to quit art forever now, and I'm gonna delete my Instagram account, ask yourself, why don't I like this piece? What is it about this piece that's bothering me? Could it be the eyes of the character? Could it be the proportions of the character? Could it be my rendering or my stylization? What is it that I don't like in this drawing? And that is gonna tell you about your weaknesses as an artist, and it's gonna give you some things that you could actually work on. So if you don't like a drawing that you made, don't let it be something that is destructive for you. Instead, make it something productive. And the last point in this video was to be patient with yourself. Very good point. You gotta be patient with yourself. Art is gonna take a serious amount of time for you to improve. So don't expect results overnight, but instead when you look back on your work from maybe a couple months ago or even a year ago, you're gonna see the differences if you keep putting in the work. It's really a grind. It's just like working out. You know, your arm is not gonna get huge after one session at the gym. You gotta be consistent, you gotta go repeatedly, you gotta form good habits, and you gotta be patient with yourself. That's a very good video, 10 out of 10. Good job.
Here's one shape I learned that changed my art. Draw 2 squiggles that come to a point. Then just continue it from the inside and repeat the pattern. You can use this technique for grass, hair, ribbons, bandages, and even horns. You can shade roughly or take a fancier approach.
I mean, that's good.
Here's 5 common anatomy mistakes.
Oh, let's go. 5 common anatomy mistakes. I can't wait.
Number 1, completely forgetting about the forehead. We can't ignore this any longer. It's like you karate chopped a cerebellum. Just remember that the eye is usually in the middle of that guide circle, and the mouth is at the bottom. Number 2.
That's kind of facts, actually. So if you look at what used to be my enemy here, look at how big that top of the skull is. right? Look at how much brain. I see a lot of people put art into my roast sessions, and I keep having to point out the fact that you gotta put a cranium in there. You can't forget about the roundness of the skull. Gotta keep that in mind. Don't chop the head off.
Is drawing only with straight lines. Rarely anything on the human body is a straight line. And this is due to the shape of our muscles, which we won't get into right now.
This is something that I think is a little bit more subjective. I know there are artists out there who like to use more rigid lines. I know there are artists who like to put more structure into their drawings. For example, there's that artist whose name I'm blanking on who did the concept artwork for The Last of Us Part 2. And you can see right here that their work is very much composed of straight lines. So this is something that's a little bit more subjective. You know, it depends on your style. You don't have to curve your lines if you don't want to. You can, you know, you don't have to use straight lines if you don't want to. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, drawing the smile with all the teeth is 110%.
Oh!
You can leave some space and it'll look amazing.
Yeah, number 3 is a good point. Drawing a smile with all the teeth, okay? Whenever I'm drawing a smile, I usually just put the teeth as one big white slab instead of drawing the individual teeth. You know, that's usually what makes smiles look so creepy.
I used to do this too, but a foot has curves in it. It's like a triangular shape. I can't.
I don't know too much about feet.
Drawing the body one part at a time. Draw the form before the details, and I promise it'll look...
Yes, you gotta set down the foundation before you draw the details. Okay, so this is she's saying not to start with small details and go one part at a time, and the next thing you know, your character's got a huge lower body but their upper body is like tiny because you got carried away. Good points. I feel like this person, Sparketh, knows what they're doing. I'm gonna give that a 9 out of 10. If it weren't for your hate towards straight lines, I would have given you a 10 out of 10.
I find myself repeating this tip a lot when I'm doing portfolio reviews with art students. So basically, when you're designing a character, you should be able to identify the 3 biggest points of contrast or tension. See, face falls within the triangle. It even works with really simple artwork. So at what point did you realize that this was a fake tip? I see this on the internet like all the time. Just be critical of the art advice you're getting online.
She had us in the first half. That's a very good video. She made her point. Okay, like at first I was like, what triangle? I've never heard of this method. Turns out it's a fake art tip, and I think this is a good video to end on. Here's the thing, okay? You gotta be critical of the art advice that you're finding online, even of my art advice. Anybody else out there who claims to be a professional artist or whatever, be critical of it. Make sure that you're taking from the people online the things that are actually helpful to you. Don't just blindly follow everything everybody says. 10 out of 10. This is a very good way to end this episode of me rating TikTok art tips. So closing thoughts, TikTok is probably not the best place for you to learn how to draw, but there are some people who are giving very solid pieces of advice. The main problem with you babies trying to learn how to draw on TikTok is there's only like 10 to 30 seconds of footage. So when you're covering the information in that short of a video, you're not going to be able to cover all the nuances surrounding the topic. It's good entertainment though, and this is a world that I haven't really been exposed to in the past. So, you know, it's interesting seeing what the kids are seeing nowadays, and it's interesting. But I hope you guys liked my take on some of these pieces of advice. There are a lot of things that I agree with here and a lot of things that I don't. And you might actually disagree with me on some of these points here. So honestly, guys, make sure you're just doing whatever works for you, okay? Everybody works a little bit differently. This is just one person's opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, everybody's got a way to do things. Everybody functions a little bit differently, but if you draw boxes on your characters, you need to get some help. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this was fun. I hope you learned something new from this children's platform called TikTok. And if you want to see more art content, feel free to subscribe to my channel. With that being said, I will see you guys on the next video. Honestly, guys, TikTok art tips weren't as bad as I expected. Pretty good. Pretty good. I gotta poop.